We have understood how and why energy is relevant within the global frame of the Agenda 2030 and the different dimensions of sustainable development. But also, we have seen that energy is not an end in itself, but a means to allow people to get access to services and to allow society to sustain their prosperity while preserving the planet. Let's now give a look to some historical trends over the last 50 years. By analyzing this evolution of the total energy supply at global level, broken down by fuel, we may distill three outcomes. The total energy supply has grown, and now it is assessed around 600 exajoule. Fossil fuels are still the main source of energy, around 80%. We fully see the imprinting of the financial crisis of 2008, which caused a fall in the energy consumption. If we compare the total energy supply at world level with that of the OECD countries, we may easily understand that the increase in the supply, especially in the last decades and even more after the 2008 crisis, is basically associated to non-OECD economies. The demand in the OECD countries is not increasing much, and this is due to the combined effects of two different drivers. Both population and economic annual growth rate are lower than in other regions. Efforts towards the improvement of energy intensity were definitely higher compared to other regions. By relying on IEA data and looking now at the share of the supply broken down by fuel, we may extract some information. The total primary energy supply in 2019 is roughly 2.5 times that of the 70s. The share of coal is roughly constant along the interval analyzed. Oil and gas increased slightly their share with a higher relevance, taken over the decades by gas. The down of the nuclear era in the 70s has brought its share around 5–6% today. In terms of renewables, and keeping in mind the convention used by International Energy Agency to convert electricity into primary energy by using the equivalent content of the kilowatt hour, we may observe that hydro has slightly increased its contribution, having a share in 2019 similar to that of other renewables like solar, PV, wind, geothermal. It is also important to mention that biofuel and waste represent 10% of the total. This category includes also solid biomass, firewood and charcoal, used in developing countries. Focusing the attention on the energy supply at global level, let's break it down by region. This is where big changes happen, confirming a new geography of energy across the globe. In the 70s, the OECD countries were responsible for more than the 60% of the supply. Today, their share is reversed, and their supply does not reach the 40% of the total. China alone and Asia, with India, have seen the biggest increase, from less than 13% in the 70s to 37%, the same as the OECD in 2019. If we now focus on the electricity production only, and we first look at the breakdown by fuel, we may see some more consistent changes in the last 50 years. Electricity production in 2019 is more than 3 times that in the 70s. Despite the coal share was kept constant, oil was mostly phased out, and gas share has increased consistently, also due to the high-efficient combined cycle power plant. The rise of low-carbon source, nuclear, hydro, and the other renewables, has brought their share close to a 40%. The breakdown by region confirms the rising relevance of China and the rest of Asia, and the new geography of energy. If these were the past trends, what is the potential future for the energy sector? Currently, a single storyline for the future does not exist, and the many uncertainties we will analyze in the next session are complicating the picture. Relying again on the IEA outlook, we can use three well-known scenarios. The stated policy scenario. It's a sort of as-is scenario, designed to comply with the today's plan of policymakers and illustrate their consequences. The announced pledges scenario takes into account all the climate commitments made by governments around the world, including the nationally determined commitment, and assumes that they will be met on time. The net zero emission scenario, it shows potential pathways to achieve net zero CO2 emissions in the energy sector by 2050. Looking in an aggregated manner to the three scenarios and comparing the future expected trends in the energy supply and the associated emissions, we can highlight some takeaways. The announced policy scenario includes policy recommendations to bend the line of CO2 emission and achieve in 2050 a lower level than in 2010 and comparable with that of the 90s. The ambition of the net zero emission scenario, bringing down to zero the net emission by 2050, leads to a considerable reduction in the total energy supply, with also extraordinary effort requested in the hard-to-abate sectors like EV industry and long-haul transport. Ambitions are huge, and the complexity of the global situation is increasing the uncertainties for the future. But whatever will the future scenario be, there are four pathways that may represent must-haves for a just energy transition. Clean electrification, not only in power generation, but also in the expansion of electricity use for transport and heating. Energy efficiency, developed in terms of materials and behavioral change. Methane emissions reduction in oil and gas operations by promoting joint public-private effort. Clean energy innovation in order to accelerate the demonstration or prototype stage. This is much needed in the hard-to-abate sector, as confirmed by the net zero scenario, designed with an availability of roughly 50% of the needed and cost-effective technologies.